Hey everyone, this is Joel Patterson, and this is my presentation for Mod 3 Special Education Interviews for EDL 853. In this module, I interviewed technically four people from my building. Our SPED teacher, Ms. Sandy Smith, our building principal, Dr. Matt Wachel, and a special education paraprofessional, Ms. Kelly Stoffel. I also reached out to Ms. Sarah Barth, who works in our early childhood department, for a couple questions as well. The first question on child find procedures, I had to reach out to Mrs. Barth because Dr. Wachel, when I asked him on this one, he did not, he was not too familiar with this process, I guess. So he referred me to Mrs. Barth, and she told me that they do the child find procedure once a month and then twice at the beginning of the school year and twice at the end. They use Dial 4 as a screening tool, as well as family information through questionnaire. And then once they do the evaluation, they use a tool called the Assessment of Early Preschool Skills, and then a play-based assessment strategy. A lot of people involved on this evaluation team. I've listed those here. If children meet the criteria for service, an IEP team is put into place at the child's home school, and then the draft of that IEP can begin, and those services can be started for that student. Like I said, my building principal, Dr. Wachel, referred me over to Mrs. Barth, and then my paraprofessional that I interviewed, Ms. Stoffel, said she really didn't have much of a background there since she worked with some of the older students in our building. As far as the most challenging part of working in special education, Mrs. Smith said that the biggest one was working with students with mental health issues and just getting more information about how to serve that population, and then paperwork. She felt that she could be used a little bit more effectively if she's working directly with children, but a lot of her time is consumed with paperwork. For Dr. Wachel, the biggest challenge was just the fact that special education is not his background. And so instead, he tries to serve more as a support for the other people in the building that do have more of a background there, and kind of relying on his team. But then also just making sure to continue to learn every day, and know that, hey, he's not an expert in special education, but he can learn along along the way from the people at our building. Ms. Stoffel said that her biggest challenge was just working with classroom teachers that maybe don't execute the IEP plan for the students the correct way in the classrooms. What advice do they have on supervision of special education staff, including para and speech path? Mrs. Smith said just sharing information and knowledge regarding all students and keeping lines of communication open and flowing. This is a challenge because of the time that it takes to have effective communication, but it's worth the effort. From Dr. Wachel, our building principal, he said just knowing each student's strengths and their goals. The IEP is a legally binding document, so it's our job to fulfill it and adhere to it throughout an entire school year. For Mrs. Stoffel, she said just sharing information with your direct supervisor, because she said we would be the ones that would know the students the best because we were with them all day, every day. And then recognizing big and small achievements and challenges, whether that's letting a student know that they've achieved a goal, or a parent, or just other staff that are working with that student in the building. How do they effectively or work effectively with parents of special needs children? With Mrs. Smith, she said just connecting with parents early and often with positive notes. They would be the ones that are going to know these students the best. So really trying to tap into that and use them as a good resource. Getting to know what the students like and what they're interested in. A lot of time needs to be spent here at the beginning of the year, getting to know your students, building those positive relationships, which is going to help lead to greater growth. From Dr. Wachel, he said just listen to students and families' perspectives, kind of like Mrs. Smith was talking about, the parents are going to be the ones who know these children so well. And so we need to use that to our advantage so that we can reach them better in school. Um, Encouraging family members to share their input, and then just taking time to make sure that they know that they are a part of this team as well, and that we're all working together to support the child. From Mrs. Stoffel, she said paraeducators don't usually work directly with the parents, but through their supervisor. So just making sure that the communication is open between para to special education teacher, and that information is transferring over to really everyone involved with the education of the child. How do they work with regular ed teachers with students with special needs? From Mrs. Smith, again, sharing information, collaborating together, working with each other, knowing each other, knowing our styles, how we teach, and how that's going to affect the students in our room and in the special education room, possibly. Every teacher, operates and teaches in just a little different way. So we need to know how we teach in order to set up good plans for the students to work in those rooms. From Dr. Wachel, he said just realizing that a disability does not define a student, and they are a student above all else. They're not just a label or a diagnosis. A lot of times students will have special services that they've qualified for, but they won't necessarily have that service for the entire day. So everything comes back to that classroom teacher. They're the ones who are primarily responsible for ensuring that that IEP is taking place, and that they're providing the experiences and opportunities for that student in the classroom for them to learn and grow. From Ms. Stoffel, our paraprofessional, again, keeping lines of communication open, keeping them informed of any special activities, any modifications that may be taking place, on a lesson or on an assessment, any upcoming events. That way they can make sure that they are in the room for those. Knowing the daily routine of the classroom, and then just getting familiar with all the students in the room, because I know Ms. Stoffel's in my classroom this year, and she does a great job with my students that do have IEPs, but there are other students that are going to come to her for needs as well. So needing to understand and get familiar with all the students in the classrooms, not just the ones with the IEPs. Advice for a first-year administrator. So from Miss Smith, our SPED teacher, she said to just ask a lot of questions and be okay with not knowing everything right off the bat. A lot of learning and experiences are going to happen along the way as you experience things. From Dr. Wachel, kind of the same thing, just lots of questions, genuinely listening to grow and learn. It's okay to not know the answer. If you don't know the answer, you can always say, hey, I don't know that answer, but I will find it out. And people are a lot more receptive to that. From Mrs. Stoffel, our para, again, don't be afraid to ask questions, take advice from your team. Kind of a general theme here is just be humble, be okay with knowing that you don't know it all, and then being okay with relying on your team. You have a strong team of people with a lot of experiences around you, and making sure to collaborate and lean on them for support. How do you describe the role of special education teacher and the building principal? From Ms. Smith, really focusing on a team approach. Every staff member is going to have something positive to bring to the table. And so if we can all work together and collaborate, we can provide better opportunities for our students. From Dr. Wachel, supporting the staff and students. Everyone needs to be on the same page if there's an IEP, to make sure that that IEP is being delivered effectively, and that those goals within the IEP are being addressed, with whether that's with the classroom teacher, the special education teacher, or even the para. And then just being present at all meetings. Anytime there's a meeting involving special education, you need to be there in order to answer questions that may pop up. Ms. Stoffel kind of echoed what Ms. Smith told us, to a team approach. and then supporting the staff by communicating plans and making sure they always know that you will listen. What characteristics do they seek in aspiring administrators with regards to special ed? An open mind and a willingness to collaborate in order to meet the needs of every student. Dr. Wachel said to understand that every child is different. And just because it's a child that receives special services doesn't make them different. They are a student first, and to never forget that. Ms. Stoffel said an open mind, flexibility, and then just treating paraprofessionals as they are a part of the staff too. I mean, they are out there on the front line working with those kids every single day, so they should be treated as such. Okay, now on to the reflection portion. In your evaluation of how participants answered, compared, or contrasted, a lot of the questions, I got a lot of the same answers from the people I interviewed, but kind of spanning all of them, every staff member that I interviewed, they all really are there to serve students. That's why they got into education. They all also told me to make sure to have an open mind and ask a lot of questions. Know that moving into an admin role and working with special education, that it's all right to not know everything, that you're going to pick up a lot of those experiences and that knowledge along the way. Something kind of that was different was just the fact that we all, excuse me, we all come from a different set of experiences and backgrounds. We all have different strengths. So we can all bring those things to the table to help put together a good team and work for student growth. Okay, thoughts and projections about my future role as an administrator and responsibilities regarding special ed, administration, leadership, and supervision. For this, I kind of narrowed it down to 3 points. Always be learning. Education is always changing. The laws that are going to apply to special education are always going to be changing. So just making sure to stay up to date with all of that as it changes. Kind of like everyone I interviewed said, ask a lot of questions, be humble, and know that you won't know it all. But you have a good team around you that you can rely on. And then just making sure to put the child first at all times. It's not what's convenient for us, but what's best for them. I believe that is the end. So thank you for watching. Hope everybody's staying warm out there today, and have a good afternoon.